anyone, sadly, could, at some point in their life, find themselves being disabled.
People with disabilities, whether they're small ones like mine or more major ones, they're being left out by the current legislation.
When you think of disability and mobility devices, what springs to mind? A wheelchair? Mobility scooter? What about an electric unicycle, skateboard or electric scooter? Currently there are 14.1 million disabled people living in the UK. That's 1 in 5. So why aren't we talking more about what micromobility can do for such a large bracket of our society? Physical disabilities are as diverse as the needs of people living with them. Shouldn't assistive devices be the same? It's time to take a closer look. This is Rob and Neil. They both have disabilities and saw an opportunity in personal light electric vehicles, or PLEVs. A few years ago, Rob underwent major surgery. Neil was born with spina bifida. PLEVs help manage their conditions.
I was born with, it's a form of spina bifida called Klippel-Feil syndrome, which basically means the vertebrae in my back are tightly fused. I've got a bone missing in my neck. So all the weight, if I show you like that, all the weight of my top half of my head is on my lower back and hips. So I'm walking, especially if I'm carrying stuff, all the pressure is on here. So within, a couple of minutes, I'm in a lot of pain. So for something like this is you see, I'm resting on it. It's taking some weight off here, which makes it easier for me to stand. I've got some shops a mile up the road one way from where I live and a mile down the road where I live. I could not walk to the shops, get some bread, get a pint of milk or whatever, and walk back again, because that would be too painful. But with this thing, I can scoot up and I'm back, and nothing has happened to the environment. My girlfriend, bless her, she loves walking, she loves hiking, and she was getting really frustrated with me that I couldn't walk with her. This is a solution to a problem that I had. The problem was I couldn't go walking with my girlfriend. This was a solution.
I had a huge operation back in 2017, and then suddenly I was left with a permanent hole in my abdomen. The hospital, etc., were doing a very good job and put me in contact with various charities and other people. And it started to dawn on me that, well, actually, in the world of PLEVs, for example, people are only thinking about it from a general perspective, and they're not taking into account the other areas that they also need to factor in as well. I mean, there was a gentleman from Afghanistan who did damage to his arms, and he nearly got a scooter, but the reason why I went for the EUC, and I think he also rides electric skateboard as well, is the fact that he can't rely on his hands to control the vehicle. And that's where the handlebarless PLEV comes in and matches that beautifully. Because of the hole, I have permanently weak core muscles now, and keeping them regularly in trim, wouldn't be able to do that on an electric scooter. But that's where the electric unicycle comes in, and just by moving and balancing on the electric unicycle really keeps my abdomen in trim, and also helps the ongoing condition as well. So it's helping manage my condition beautifully, as well as doing great stuff for the environment. It's been absolutely mind-blowing.
Society can be more disabling to the disabled individual than their disability.
Neil is talking about the social model of disability. It's a way of thinking about disability in society. Infrastructure hasn't been built in consideration of people with disabilities at the forefront. Truthfully, it's been a huge afterthought, and it's on all of us to do more. We're even seeing it with the growing infrastructure of the EV charging network. A 2020 survey by ZapMap and Motability found that 1/3 of disabled people had difficulties locating a suitable charger to meet their needs. Society needs to amend its fabric to be less restrictive and instead fit the lives and capabilities of everybody. Because let's be real, if you live long enough, everyone is going to need it. It's a win-win because the social model doesn't inhibit the non-disabled, but transforms mobility for people with disabilities. If you are 1 in 5 who lives with a disability, in the UK, life costs you £583 more on average a month. Micromobility can help cut travel costs. It costs less than £1 in electricity to charge an electric scooter like Neil's, whereas fuel costs around £1.30 per litre. You do the maths.
How does it make you feel knowing that these rides are technically not legal to ride on the roads?
I'm very frustrated because I would use it more. I mean, I rely on my car for my work, I have 2 kids, I have to get them around. If I got points on my license, that would make a massive difference to my insurance and the amount I drive, and I cannot risk that. So for me, the punishment is way above what it should be. You know, 6 points on your license and £300 for using something like this that helps me get around, it makes me angry. It's not the vehicle, it's the individuals.
Right.
And they shouldn't be punishing other people who use the same stuff that other people are using to mess about in. You should be tackling the people that are doing it.
E-rides have grown in popularity over recent years, yet, as the media loves to remind us, there have been some teething problems with mass adoption and management of rider behaviour in public spaces. Politicians and charities have been incredibly vocal about the introduction of PLEVs into our cities, so I thought, why not reach out to them? Unfortunately, I either got no response or a response of no comment. However, I did get one response from a charity and organisation called Disability Rights UK. So today I'm here in Rochester and I'm going to be speaking to Anna Morell, who is the Communications Officer, and she has a disability herself and is somewhat concerned about the rapid uptake of PLEVs.
Disability Rights UK is the UK's leading disabled people's organisation, which is an organisation run by and for disabled people. I've got a condition called lipodema, which is a painful fat disorder which impairs my mobility, and then I have chronic fatigue syndrome, which means I'm constantly knackered and again impairs my mobility.
What are Disability Rights UK's views on electric micromobility?
We're finding them a bit of a problem at the moment because the sector's exploded so quickly. There's very little regulation around it, and we find that generally as disabled people in shared spaces there are a lot of barriers to accessibility, and the way things stand at the moment, this is one of them. The scooter movement, that's kind of exploded really quickly, and they're really dangerous for people with visual impairment. You can't hear them coming, you can't see them coming. People often leave the ones that are part of hire schemes in the middle of pavements. They're really whizzy, so people don't think that people won't get out of the way. But of course, if you've got a mobility impairment or processing impairment or visual impairment, you just don't know they're coming, and before you know it, you've been knocked flying.
If you live in the UK, over the past year, you may well have noticed the e-scooter rental trials that have been rolled out across cities and towns nationwide. Unfortunately, despite there being successes in the trials with encouraging data, rental scooters have been subject to bad behaviour. Ridden and left scattered on pavements, blocking walkways, they are all concerns that disability charities rightly have. Rental e-scooter vendors like Dot and Voy, who I spoke to earlier this year, claim they continue to collaborate with organisations like the Royal National Institute of Blind People. To help combat the main worries of sound and littering, companies are now looking into a design safety noise to help with detectability. Parking bays have also been introduced.
We need, at the heart of the disability strategy, a deep understanding in government and wider society what the social model means. That it means, look at that curb, you can't get up that curb with a wheelchair. How do we flatten things? People's attitudes, how do we make people understand that everyone deserves to play a part in society and everyone deserves equal access?
It was really interesting talking to Anna today because it's clear that there are definitely pros and cons to this scenario. However, there are loads of countries out in the world that have legislated electric scooters and PLEVs. Why don't we take a look at what they've done to introduce them?
In America, PLEV laws and regulations differ from state to state. The American Disability Act, which spans the whole of the United States, however, has made a sweeping statement. Back in 2010, over a decade ago, the Department of Justice made a revision to add motorised devices to their laws beyond wheelchairs and scooters. It states that states and local governments and businesses must allow people with disabilities who use other types of power-driven mobility devices unless it cannot be accommodated because of legitimate safety requirements. For Taylor Lewis, who was born with tendons, ligaments, and connective tissue 3 times denser than normal, walking around gets tiring very quickly. So, instead of a bulky wheelchair or car, he likes to use an electric longboard. And thanks to the American Disability Act, he's able to use his board freely, just like any mobility device, wherever he goes, even in an airport. Here's a snippet from his short film, Assisted Mobility.
People treat me differently when I use a chair or scooter. There's so much of a stigma surrounding these kinds of mobility devices that people forget how to act. The longboard changes that. People still see that I look different, but the board and its novelty overpower any social awkwardness. They're so curious about the board that they stop worrying about how they should interact with a disabled person.
It's a hugely insightful must-watch. Make sure to check out the full feature via the link below in the description. Over to Thailand. E-rides are legal. A man who wears a prosthetic leg has used this to his advantage and uses an EUC as a souped-up mobility aid. In fact, EUCs are widely accepted in Thailand to the point that even the authorities have seen the benefits of a hands-free e-ride. They can prepare handcuffs before they even arrive. And there are so many other countries utilising e-rides. In Paris, firefighters will soon be adopting EUCs to help them move faster through traffic to get to emergencies quicker. In Lithuania, county police use electric scooters. I could go on. The point here is that many other countries in the world have found a way of integrating PLEVs and harnessing them to serve their community. According to research from Halfords, looking at global legislation of e-scooters, it was found that the majority of regulation prohibits their use on public pavements, instead encouraging use on roads and sometimes cycle lanes where available.
Some people who, with mobility issues, they want to do whatever they can to make their device legal. And many have got in touch with the DVLA, okay, and they have been, some of those many have been successful in registering their devices, receiving a Q plate V55 form, which means technically it's a mobility scooter, even though it doesn't meet the manufacturing standards of one, which means they don't need insurance or MOT, etc. And that's fantastic by the DVLA. However, there's probably half again of that number where their applications are being declined, purely because the person hasn't been educated, the person approving it hasn't been educated on these devices by central government.
It's been known that people with a registered disability have been successful in registering their e-rides with the DVLA. And although we don't know the exact number, those success stories are most likely to be few. The paperwork that comes with registration, MOT and getting insurance can make it a head-scratching process.
And would you recommend an electric scooter to anybody else who has a disability?
I would say yes, it's great. I find it works for me, but like with Rob, choose the one that works for you best.
I would like to see some kind of amnesty, which would enable the government to get a quick win, okay, environmentally, for people such as Neil and other people with mobility issues as well. As time goes by, I'm seeing more and more retired people on these electric scooters happily going down to the local shops.
Do you think that there is a future for PLEVs?
Well, it's already happened, isn't it? The present's here, the present will be the future. So yes, there is, but it needs to be safer. We find time and time again that people don't really consider disability when they're considering inventing things, and a fifth of the population is disabled, and everyone, unless they die young and healthy, is going to end up disabled. So it's in our own best interest to think about the impacts of things that we create and making them as accessible as possible and as safe as possible for all people either using them or around them.
If the current UK laws were to change and regulation of e-rides were put in place, electric micromobility could be a sound swap-in to the space-stealing, high-cost and tailpipe pollutive petrol diesel cars for a significant number of people with mobility issues, even people without disabilities. The government say that they want to act on climate change and improve quality of life. Well, this is something that they could do right now that can make an instant impact on the world. Whilst Rob and Neil are both impassioned advocates about micromobility, it's clear that disability charities take a different stance on their integration in our cities. There are still hurdles to jump to make sure that organisations like Disability Rights UK feel confident that e-rides don't pose a significant threat, but for people like Rob, Neil, Taylor and I'm sure many others, they shed a light on what could be.
Electroheads, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more content just like this, like this video and check out our Instagram at Electroheads for way more content to keep you up to date. See you soon.